Malinali embroidered feathers on a cape she had made for her son, with feathers that she had saved from the palace of Montezuma, with cotton that she had found in what had been the market of Tlatelolco, with jade stones and seashells that Cortés had given her because for him they held no value. It was a cape for a prince. That's how Malinali wanted him to appear on the day of his baptism. He had been born a week before in a house in Coyoacán, where she lived with Cortés. She gave birth to him as her mother had given birth to her, squatting, except that she did not have a bathhouse or a midwife or a burial for the umbilical cord in the field of battle so that the boy would become a warrior. That was fine with Malinali. She did not want her son to kill. She was tired of the dead. Cortés's eyes were also sick of looking at death. So many mutilated bodies, so much destruction. His arms were tired of taking up the sword, of cutting, of severing. That is why, months before, they had gone to live in Coyoacán and seek rest. They both yearned to rest. Nevertheless, Cortés was not a man who could live in repose. If he was not planning strategies of attack or defense, he felt as if time was getting away from him. The worst was that when he had time to think on his own, feelings of guilt assaulted him. He did not know if it had been the right thing to demolish so many pyramids, burn so many codices. His justification was that there had been no choice, that he had done it defending life, but sometimes he asked himself for what. Before him, he had the opportunity to create everything anew. He had destroyed everything to create everything. But what? He could design plans for new cities, distribute lands, approve laws, but deep down, very deep down, he knew that life continued to be a mystery. It didn't belong to him. He could destroy it, but not create it. That made all the difference. In other words, he was not a god. Suddenly, he had been overcome with a desire to create a life and had sought out Malinali to do it. When Malinali became pregnant, she felt complete, happy. She knew that in her womb there was beating the heart of a being that would unite two worlds, the blood of Moors and Christians with that of the Indians, that pure, unmixed race. During her pregnancy, when she did not know whether she would have a boy or a girl, she wove blankets from Malinali fiber in a loom. Malinali braided Malinali. The braided grass prepared the warp of her fabric, weaving the grass. She was going to dress her child with all her being. She was going to cover it like the shell that covers the seed in order to reverse the process taking place in her womb. Malinali knew that just as every plant fulfilled the cycle of being sown, sprouting, flowering, and death, always going from darkness toward the light, likewise within her, a seed was germinating that would come out into the light. The seed of a plant, in order to germinate, had to cast off the shell that was covering it. She wondered if that was why priests who sacrificed prisoners flayed them and then wore their skin. The seed loses everything to gain everything. It loses its shell to become a plant, which is in turn everything: earth, water, sun, and wind. But when her child came out of the womb, she wanted to continue to cover it, and that is why she made blankets of Malinali. When the boy was born, Cortés celebrated for 3 days. It was his firstborn, a male child. Now he had an heir, someone to perpetuate his name. But a black thought tarnished his joy, that his son was a son born outside of wedlock, and moreover from a slave. His son would not be well looked upon in the court of Spain. His son was a mestizo. To complicate matters, his wife, Catalina Suarez, had arrived in Mexico. From the very first day, she made great effort to ruin whatever satisfaction remained in Cortés. Catalina had not been able to give him children and was terribly jealous of Malinali and her child. Cortés, attempting to please her, organized a welcoming party. During the feast, Catalina pursued Cortés everywhere, not to enjoy his company, but to argue. The quarrel grew so loud that most of the guests decided to leave early. Cortés and Catalina continued arguing in their bedroom. The day after, while Malinali nursed her son, she was told by one of the servants that Catalina had been found dead that morning. A servant woman had found her in bed, dressed in the same clothes that she had worn to the party. There were bruises on her neck. Her pearl necklace had been torn off and the bed urinated on. The rumor of a possible murder spread all over. One of the things that most affected Malinali was that the necklace had been torn off. Someone had disconnected Catalina from the necklace of creation. The starry infinite night watched over Cortés and Malinali. They were sitting around a bonfire, surrounded by soldiers who ate in silence. In the field, there were various fires that were reflected in the stars. Malinali watched Cortés, who was looking all around, now at the sky, now at the fire, now at the ground. From the day that she had watched him cleaning his weapons and sharpening his sword, she knew that an obsidian wind was threatening her. She knew perfectly well how he was the father of her son, how his blood had been recreated in her entrails. She thought that she had always known him. He was so familiar, so near, that she accepted him as part of her destiny, as if he had been born from her own womb, as if he had been born to listen to her tongue, as if he had been born to injure her heart. On noticing Cortés's restless gazing, she easily discovered in it a permanent dissatisfaction, a constant disappointment, as if the only thing that could bring him satisfaction and pleasure was the act of conquering. Not the goals achieved, not the victories, not the infinite power he possessed. This man is insatiable, she told herself. It seems that the only thing that awakens him to life is death. The only thing that gives him joy is blood. The urge to destroy, to break apart, to tear, to transform. She felt pity for him and for the first time had compassion for this obsessive and terrible man. She felt it a shame that he could not be at peace. They were on the way to Ibueras with plans of conquest, and Malinali was afraid that if he was successful, his desire for conquest would grow and he would go mad wanting more and more. She imagined that there would never be any rest. What a dreadful punishment, she thought, for this man is the father of my child. On their way to Ibueras, they passed by the place where Malinali was born. to walk again on the ground where she had played so often with her grandmother, where she had known the unconditional love that she offered, was a strange experience. Everything seemed diminished, made smaller. What in the memories of her childhood was enormous was there, but now she saw it in its proper dimensions. She had contemplated this return many times, but had never made it. It was not until then, in the company of Cortés, that she retraced her past steps. Some distance before arriving, Malinali's heart was already uneasy, burning with its beating. The blood pulsed in her eyes, and her look displayed the innocence of a girl and the endless hatred of one who for years had held on to a grief, who for years had kept a latent anxiety concealed deep in her heart, a forgotten ache that awoke hastily as Malinali approached the place where she had been abandoned by her mother.